Hello everybody, so welcome to our third set of videos for COMP3218, game design course at the University of Southampton. My name's Dave Millard, I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and I am here with...
Ricky Prince, also one of the lecturers on the course.
Callum Sportheth, I'm a PhD student.
And I'm Tom Blount, I'm also a PhD student.
So we've got four I think in this batch.
No,
five in this batch. Five games to have a look at. Ricky, do you want to say a little bit about what we asked the students to do?
Absolutely. So at this point we started asking the students to look at some of the research that's been worked into games. So we asked them to look at producing a game prototype that contained one of the following innovations. So they could look at adaptive difficulty or some other form of adaptivity, procedural content generation, use of a novel interface, so things like VR or an interesting motion controller, and real-world location-based elements. So they had to pick one of those to implement in their game, or maybe more.
Brilliant. Okay, so should we get on and look at our first one?
We should. What's our first one, Dave?
So it's called Dungeon Escape.
Excellent. Right, who saw this in the expo? Ooh, music.
Yeah.
Always good.
So I saw this one in the expo. This one is a procedural content one.
Yeah.
And it is a sort of simple maze escape game. You're in a maze, collect some treasure, find the exit of the maze.
Okay.
So it's a collection dynamic, is that right? Lost in a dungeon, must escape to win, collect chests along the way,
WAS to move, shift to run, space to jump.
Should we start on extreme?
Yeah, I'm just, what do you recommend, Tom? You saw this in the expo. Should we go eat? Let's Charlie Hard good it and do it.
I'll go with easy just so we can sort of
Okay, yeah, rather than risking dying and using...
it doesn't really... The difficulty, I think, just affects the size of the maze and the number of traps in it.
Okay. Oh, I see. So we're actually
traps.
And it's very dark.
I was going to say, it looks...
It doesn't help. Admittedly, we are in a...
If we're running
in an office on a bright sunny day, which doesn't help.
I'm meant to jump over these?
I think
I lost most of my health.
I think you're on the timer. So
can we loot the chests?
You can, yes.
What's in the chests?
Like that.
Oh, you just run into it.
Oh,
what does that get us?
You got score.
You get score. So some of the dynamics are a bit conflicting because the goal is to get out in the least amount of time, but also collect chests to get a score. So you've got sort of two conflicting goals almost.
Is there any time when I wouldn't be running?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Is that a separate key?
That is a separate key.
Of course.
As is jumping, is jumping there to get over the fires?
I think maybe.
Must be.
So, I don't know.
So was the problem before that you weren't jumping when you weren't running when you jumped over the fires?
Oh, possibly.
So I think most of these things are set dressing, like the sort of vases and desks and stuff. The only thing you can really interact with is the chests. There's
escaped.
But yeah, the sceneries, they said they added sort of extra set dressing in the rooms to sort of give you an idea of where you were and where you'd been. So
yeah, that's good.
I think that's valuable.
So what did you just click on then? I missed that.
I went to easy again.
Easy.
So your score's carried over from the last level as well.
That's probably a bug, isn't it?
Also, why is it 323? That's you got 11 points for the first chest, and then
that chest there was worth significantly more than 11.
Yeah. So as soon as you actually understand what you have to do, you're right. That conflict between the two objectives is really odd.
Yeah. So I think,
is there meant to be anything to guide me as to where I need to go? Do I always go through the fires?
Yeah, I mean, you just took another 25 points of damage there.
there you go.
There's no way of getting past those, is there?
So I think they might be on a timer, so at some point they'll go out and then, like a sort of dodging.
Okay, well let's just wait for a second and see if we can get past.
But it's possible they're not.
I don't think so. Looks like this.
There we go. Go.
Oh, okay.
Running becomes useful.
But again, given
there's
that
no cue that's going to happen,
and also given that your objective is to get out as fast as possible, it feels a little bit sort of tormenting to have to sit and wait there.
Yeah.
Right? It's not
very gated, right?
It's not like I can jump over and sort of
it's
get
almost like
through it quicker.
You ought to have a choice. It's like you can either do something dangerous and get through quickly, or you can wait and get through safely.
Well, maybe that is it then. So you can sort of decide to sacrifice some health and just run straight through, but. Yeah.
I've come all the way down here.
This is your dead end.
There's a dead end.
Well, on the bright side, they did put a chest in their dead end, so again, rewarding like exploration
That's
rather than
nice.
just...
Intentionally, or was that a fluke? Like
So it's tough to say from first glance. I think so the way they generate this is they generate some rooms and then put corridors, like specifically generated corridor sections between them.
So how do they...
Or rather, they sort of go room, corridor,
Right.
and check they don't overlap. And they have specific different corridors, so they have some corridors with chests, some corridors with traps. And the higher the difficulty, I think the more likely you are to get traps.
And are there any rules about the way that those things are laid out?
I don't think so. I think the way they do it is they just randomly pick from a pool of available
So
ones.
there's no guarantee that the level will have X amount of fire pits in it, for example?
I don't think so. I know they do. So
Or you won't have 2 fire pit connections in a row.
I don't think so. So they mentioned validation-wise, they validate to make sure that you're not too close to the exit. But short of that, I'm not sure what else they're doing.
this is a much... Oh. I was just going to say this is a much bigger level than the previous one we played, and then accidentally ran into the exit.
So the exit's not exactly clear, is it?
So, what do you? Okay, so but if there's basically a random configuration of the maze, so what are you racing against? Because your time is not comparable.
Yeah.
Is it? So there's no.
No, exactly. Like, what's the point of the race if you're not able to like try and beat your time?
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that gets the kind of one of the first questions we were going to ask with all of these games, I think, was
how does this enhance?
how does the innovation actually enhance the game? So, I mean, it might work perfectly well, but I suppose the other way of thinking about it is, would this be better if they hadn't have done it this way? So in this case, would this have been better with designed levels?
So this is the thing, right? Every time I asked that question, the answer I got was replayability.
Sure.
And I think,
but that just sounds a bit like la replayability as opposed to
the problem here is actually that answer doesn't work because the replayability comes from trying to beat your score, right? And your score is utterly irrelevant. So because it's a random distance, right?
It's difficult to make meaningful choices to get through the maze. It is very much just explore this maze and see if you are lucky enough to find a way out.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, I feel a little bit sorry for the students in this case, because we kind of said to them, go and make yourself a game which has one of these features in. So many of them, I think, haven't thought about whether their designers are really suits it.
Yeah.
But that is part of what we ask them to do, is to make sure you have a game where actually it really does add something to the game. And yes, it's always the case that doing the generator also means that they didn't have to go and design 100 levels. Yeah. But actually, if they designed 100 levels, or given the scale of this game, maybe 3 levels, it would have been a better game. Yeah. So I think it's kind of missing some of the point there, I think.
One thing I do quite like about the algorithm itself is it's generating quite interesting corridors. They are twisting and turning. There's different changes in height.
And the height thing is good, actually.
Like I say, it's not generating the corridors. It is selecting from a list of pre-built corridors and then putting them together.
So is it like blocks? Are they like map tiles and it's connecting them together?
Essentially, yeah, I think so. Okay. So basically, a room can connect to a corridor, and a corridor can.
It's still nice to make that work on the Z-axis there. That's kind of.
Yeah. I think this would be a really good for creating, or a good algorithm for creating like FPS deathmatch.
Yeah, or like
maps.
a roguelike, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a roguelike.
So there it would work, right? Because it's variety. It's kind of
a game like roguelike.
And any game where you not knowing what's around the next corner is really important. Okay.
So if it was sort of explorationary or survival, so like a survival horror game where you didn't know that there was a zombie going to jump out of the next corner, and
it's
the randomness of the level meant you couldn't play it again and go, oh, I know there's going to be a bad guy around this corner.
It's because they've chosen to make it a race, basically, is the problem. So what do we think about the quality?
I think it's come together quite nice. Yeah. Like the effect and the graphics and the choice of... Like it's playable as well. Like I'm able to move around really easily.
Good clear set of instructions at the beginning. Yeah. Good thing here at the end to restart.
I mean that point of it being a bit of a conflict in terms of the game design. Like it's not clear whether it's a race game or a collection game. why have both mechanics unless they're both emphasising your core dynamic?
The score does carry over as well, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I think that's a bug, isn't it?
But it looks good. They've used a limited number of assets well. I think the sound works well.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of creating something that's consistent and has a nice look and feel, I think they've done a good job.
Yeah.
So very well presented. Okay, so what about the implementation itself? So in this case, the procedural generation. Do we feel we've already talked about a little bit? But do we feel it's good?
So talking about whether it perceptibly impacts the play. Certainly if you play it a couple of times, you're in a different maze every time. Partly it doesn't really matter because again you've got no guidance, you're just stumbling through and hoping you find the exit. So I'm not sure it affects it for the better.
But the actual effectiveness of the generation though. So
it seemed to generate some quite interesting sort of mazes. Again, coming back to the idea of the height and the corridors aren't.
So I guess the question is, if they were determined to make a kind of race game, they needed to build that into the generator, didn't they? So that the generator kind of has an idea about how long it takes to do things and the order of which you're doing things. So I think. So you're.
Oh, gee. Sorry, we're just trying to see the maze generation.
So we should be able to see this, right? If we run it in this scene.
Should be somewhere.
Yeah, should be somewhere. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So my point was, if you knew you were going to do the race thing, you should have built that into the generator.
Yeah.
So that what it's doing isn't building a maze; it's generating a
series of traps
a route with alternative routes through it, with traps along each route, which kind of give you similar things, so you could at least be comparable. So they could have done something a lot more sophisticated, and perhaps the generator they've got doesn't match the dynamics particularly well.
Sort of generating the rings.
There we go.
So the actual algorithm, I think, it's not quite brute force, but it will sort of just put in a room, check if it conflicts with anything, and then throw it away if it does.
There you go. So I'm going to think. So I like it, but I don't think it doesn't fit the game. Is the problem?
Yeah, there's that conflict between the style of game and the type of generation they've gone for.
And as we said, if it was generating a kind of more of a mazy type game, I think that's done a nice job of that.
Yeah, I mean, like a collection game might have been interesting to have generated because you could put things in a different place every time. Then forces an exploration a bit more than than currently. A bit more difficult with a race, I guess, other than generating what the opponents are going to be like in that particular race to give you more of a challenge. But as I said, there's no opponent in this. There's no real thing that you're comparing to.
So we also said we talk about kind of how meaningful the innovation is. I think we've kind of already covered that. But is it meaningful in terms of gameplay or experience? And yes, it is. But
so to a limited extent, maybe they could have done more.
Yeah. And it doesn't really take advantage of what they've got. It feels like they've come up with a really nice algorithm, and then they've just not really thought about how to make a game that really fits that algorithm.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so our next game is Lost in Space.
Okay, I saw this one in the expo as well, and this one is basically that thing whizzing past us just then was the sun. They have generated a solar system, and each of these little ticks around your ship let you go and sort of point to the direction to a stellar body in the solar system.
Okay, so mouse is steer, W thrust forward.
There is, however, no indication of direction, and space is really big, so we could be here for a while.
Okay.
There's also no parallax.
You zoom out, or is it zooming out as you accelerate?
It's zooming out as you accelerate.
Well, that's kind of nice.
So yeah, if you just hold that key there for a second.
But space is really big.
Space is big, yes.
And there isn't really much indication that you're moving.
No.
Well, we zoomed.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have some parallax or something of just...
Well, it'd be nice to know if I'm getting closer to the one that I'm going towards.
Just some sort of particle effect drifting past,
Or like a distance indicator on
parallax is definitely...
Yes.
So yeah, space...
Or just to not be in space, which is really, really big. Have we mentioned that?
So you might think it's a long way to the chemist, but that's just peanuts compared to space.
You could also generate your space to be less like
less big. Less big.
Yeah.
You could start the player near a planet, like where maybe the corner of it's on the screen,
So without wishing to spoil a lot, there's not a whole lot for us to do when we get there anyway. So they've generated a solar system with a bunch of random planets.
Yep.
And those planets have random population numbers and sort of climates and sizes and things like that.
Okay.
But that's it.
So you mentioned something before we started, but are they doing No Man's Sky? Are they aiming for Elite? What are they going for?
They have tried to go for a combination of the two. They were talking to me in the
No Man's Elite.
No Man's Elite or Elite Man's Sky.
Oh, that's better.
How about No Elite?
So they said they wanted to basically simulate an entire galactic economy and have not just like one solar system.
There was! I missed it! Oh no!
Wait, is this?
There it is.
So if you hover over that, you can press the interact key to land.
Very different.
Okay.
Oh, we made it.
Okay, so that looks a little bit wonky in Unity, but basically you get some stats about the planet.
Yeah.
That just says this is the temperature, this is the orbital period.
Okay.
And that's it. That's the only thing they finished, unfortunately.
Should we send Ricky off to another planet?
I don't know how to get out.
Is that an option?
Oh, there we go. Yep. I'm going to go this way over here.
So they wanted like this economy.
Yeah, so what were they trying to do?
They wanted the idea of buying and selling stuff between planets and being able to buy stuff. So they wanted to simulate like agricultural worlds and high-tech worlds. So you can buy food cheaply from agricultural planets and sell it to high-tech planets.
So they kind of their sort of minimum shippable product, if you like, was a trading game.
Well, they also wanted combat and stuff and lots of other things. And like if they picked any one of those like individual things.
Did they know they only had 3 weeks?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
But I think you could have done some basic. You could have built a basic trading game.
Yeah.
I mean, so part of the problem is I don't quite understand why they're making you fly between them. So if I suppose this is what you're saying. If you'd set out to build a trading game, you wouldn't necessarily even bother with that, right? You'd have a little animation, and that'd be.
I don't know. Elite Dangerous is basically just.
Yeah, but it also has combat and all the rest of it. So there's a reason to fly endlessly in the void.
I don't know.
But you've got to have like some random encounters or something on on that, or maybe at least show that something else is happening in the universe. Like there are other ships flying past, and you've got to not immediately crash into them or something.
I also like the fact you can't glance away just in case the planet is flying past.
That's right. As you see the little dot moving, you're like, oh, there it is. Oh, missed it again. Missed it. Don't worry.
If you miss it by too much, you'll never figure out which of those ticks it is.
In fairness to them, space is bigger than this.
Yeah.
So
even building something where I just have to like collect and explore would have given anything to this game. So even if it just like
it's a shame,
gave me a list that said we've generated like 17 planets,
go and look.
Find them.
And why? So and the information they have generated here has nothing to do with trading. There's nothing here. I don't think.
Yeah. So
there's nothing here about resources and there's nothing to say there's any kind of model behind there about different resources having different effects on one another and kind of.
So I mean, it does in a very sort of minor way. So I think the population numbers might be generated. So the distance from the star affects the temperature.
Yep.
The temperature I think affects the population.
Right.
And I think the goal was the population would then affect the goods produced.
Gotcha. Okay. So they did have that intention.
But yeah.
I think that's sort of the issue.
But the problem is also even the random generation is not exactly sophisticated. It is just system.random with a couple of like pluses and minuses in it.
And then some rules which say what that means for the planets in question. Yeah. Okay.
It seems to be just lacking a core dynamic as a game, or sort of a real thing to do.
I think the problem is we kind of said this already, but because they've intended from the beginning to build an ambitious game, they've put in things so the bit where you fly around only really makes sense if you're going to have combat or some kind of action scenes. Otherwise, why not just go from static screen to static screen and just let you move between planets, right? And have just a menu system for time, right? And then you can do it much more interesting. You can start off with having to use hibernation. You can then get new technologies which enables you to do faster than light travel and all the rest of it. So I think if you'd set out with that in mind, you could have made a better game. And again, if you'd set out with the combat stuff in mind, you'd have approached it very differently. But
I think absolutely
that over ambition has really hampered them.
So the ambition is nice, and it wouldn't take a whole heap of work to sort of actually add that trading system in when you get to planets and stuff. But the problem is what they've done is they've had this ambition and just gone straight for it. Like we said this time and time again. Go for a minimum viable product first. Yeah. Like just get the absolute minimum thing you need for your game to be a game.
It was sort of the lesson of the first coursework, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like pick a core dynamic and just build a very small game around that.
And then start adding else,
the millions of other things that would flesh it out.
It partly also they mentioned they had some problems during development with like various this and that.
Sure.
And, like I'm sure things got pushed back. But
So okay, well I mean in terms of the quality, we're quite limited in what we've got here, but looks nice. There's some...
The controls are interesting. Like using mouse to steer and thrusting forward, feels quite natural, but like different enough that I'm having to think about what I'm doing and where I'm flying.
Something I do quite like the arrows that point to each of the planets, so you're not just lost in the void of space.
Yeah.
Oh man, imagine if that wasn't there.
Some other distances would be.
Yeah.
Oh, that seems quite a texture.
Did you say there was a star?
Yeah.
Can we find the star?
Yeah, it's one of those ticks.
But we don't know which one.
Exciting.
Well, we know the orbital.
So information design could have been a lot
based
more
on the
yeah.
And the same thing as there's you can imagine those ticks.
Just getting bigger as you get closer. Right?
So initially, just telling you information about what's a planet, what's a star, and then once you've visited, perhaps you get other information about them when your ship points towards them, just as a reminder, or there's all sorts of things you could have done. But yeah, difficult if they've run out of time. Okay, so while Callum finds the star, let's go back to quality. So yeah, limited, but seems to work well.
It's nicely polished, but just so limited in scope that I'm not convinced there's a whole much of game there.
It's not really a game, is it? There's no play. There's a bit of exploration.
You could argue it's exploration, but at the end of the day, you're just going and looking at numbers, and they don't have any meaning or impact.
So again, it's a procedural generation. So we said it should generate quality content. So again, there's nothing really wrong with what they generated, but it's just quite simplistic.
Yeah, very.
And again, there's no real model behind it. It's procedural generation gets interesting when you have kind of a model of how things can work, and then you use those models to generate things.
Yeah.
So
especially if you're like hiding that from the user, the player, but the player sort of can figure it out from the information that's there.
Absolutely.
None of the stats that came up weren't really interesting. As a having flown all the way there, I was like, oh, it's this temperature. I had no there was no sense of that. It had no impact really, so it wasn't.
I think lacking some of the fun bits, like in No Man's Sky, naming the planets and kind of that creativity sense as well. Okay, I suppose these questions are really going to be more about imagining the game they were doing, really. But so, is the innovation meaningful in terms of gameplay or experience? Does it?
Well, that's the thing. As it stands now, no. And depending on how they developed it, potentially, but also potentially not. It's difficult to say.
So if they'd gone with the trading, then probably would have made it a bit more. And
do you think? Why do you think that?
Well,
and again,
because it's got linked with exploration. I think that whole thing about kind of, because there's always that excitement about finding a new planet, discovering what it is, then learning how to link it in with what you've got already, and I think that does really help.
But again, I think it would need to be a bit more sophisticated than it is now. They'd have to add in more validation of making sure there's always this sort of planet that produces this sort of good, and things like that, rather than
have some kind of valid
rather than just randomly generating things based on the distance from the sun.
And then the second one is, does the game take advantage of what its innovation does? Or does it take advantage of the fact it's procedure generated? And the answer at the moment is no, because of simplicity, I think. But they could do. It's the basis.
The potential exists for it too. But
okay, I think we should probably move on.
Yep.
Okay, so our third game is Hammerman. So this is one that I saw in the expo.
Is this about MC Hammer, Dave?
I wish it was.
Is it about?
So they did. So this was a group that chose to actually let you put in a seed at the beginning. So you can either just hit confirm and it gives you a random seed, or you can put in a seed.
Sure, it doesn't need a number.
Oh.
Well done, Callum. Good seed.
This is your magical world, Ricky.
I think that's not a good seed.
I don't seem to be able to do anything. Number of rooms,
does
1.
Rasden move your room?
No.
Interesting.
Okay, that looked like a bug to me. Try just hitting.
Yeah, I'm just going to hit go.
Don't hit space in it.
There we go. And space for the hammer. So,
whoa, what's it doing? What's that hammer doing?
So basically, the
is that
game
how hammers work?
It generates a maze made up of rooms and corridors between the rooms, and you have to move from one to one and hit them. The hammer is always, and you are always facing in the same direction.
Okay. Is that intentional part of the challenge?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So they said they had a cooldown on the hammer, so you couldn't just spam the spacebar.
That's not true, is it?
But it's not true. It doesn't work.
So do you keep dying or you keep winning? I can't tell.
Oh, he's winning.
So you can
down
fall off the
lives.
platforms.
You reckon?
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
You died. Press P to restart.
You don't press P, you just fall forever.
Of course, P
So
being that.
there's a couple of things here. So the first thing is, it's quite a nice idea to enable people to put a seed in at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because it means if they get a really fun level, they can put it in again. But it doesn't really make sense when you have a progression of levels like this, because it might be that the really fun one is 10 levels in or something, and then there's no way of skipping to it. So I kind of feel that they've...
Not to mention when we put a seed in, we were stuck in one room with no enemies.
So all the seeds we tried in the expo worked
have to be
okay.
numbers, don't they?
Okay,
or did you try text?
No, it was we put text in, yeah. So the algorithm works here by basically it takes the room that you're in at the beginning. It randomly chooses one space around you, sticks another room there. Then it randomly chooses a room and it repeats that process.
When you say it randomly chooses a room, is it just a square or a square with an enemy in it?
It randomly chooses a square.
I think the squares always have enemies.
They always have enemies in them.
And they're always joined by corridors. So it's just the orientation of them that changes.
So basically it picks the room and it grows and it chooses where to grow from again. There's no checking to see if there's already a room there. So in fact, there really is none. So some of these rooms are in fact multiple rooms. Although I think they do check to make sure before they generate multiple enemies.
It could be quite interesting actually if it just spawned 6
So,
enemies.
but this is so I'm not convinced that is the algorithm though, because if you work out the probability of this long sequence appearing, it's 1 in 4 times 1 in 4 times 1. It just doesn't add up to me. So I think there's a bug going on in their generation somewhere.
Do you not think they're only ever checking on like on the end of the...
Even so, it's a bit
branch.
weird that you'd...
Might be. It's kind of odd though, because they've actually got some generation happening that's actually more complicated than the generation they tried to have happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get
like
these.
We
very
always
long,
get these like two branches, and I've not seen
they never seem to be connected as well, which is odd.
Yeah, like if they were overlapping, Dave, I'd
Yeah.
expect like at some point these to join.
So that's the explanation they gave, but it doesn't seem to work that way. And the number of rooms doubles each time, so it starts off as 2, I think.
Can I jump?
And then they add 4, then they add 8, then they add 16. So we did have a conversation about the grain of rice in the chess set, and they're aware of that, but I don't think they've really thought about what it meant for the game or the gameplay.
So what I'm struggling with in particular with this is, even if the procedural generation was working exactly as described, I'm struggling to understand what it's actually adding to the sort of core gameplay.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I think it's detracting from it. This would be a far better game if there was any level design.
Yes.
Like that, this is randomly generated and like poorly randomly generated has actually made for terrible levels.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like the fact that I have to go all the way up one branch
Yes.
and then back again to complete this.
And again, it comes down to that thing: is you can't just do random generation. You have to have some rules in.
Yeah.
You have to have some things saying, well, you shouldn't have more than a row of 5 rooms because it's not fun just to.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking to offer the player a different experience every time,
Yeah.
and this is actually the same strategy working over and over again.
Oh yeah, man! Like there's a dominant strategy. I've not done anything.
You just
like
spam.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even those nodding birds.
So if we think about some of the criteria we've got, so if we go through the quality of the game, so the fact that the the avatar is always in the same direction. Like I said, you could argue I suppose it's a feature because it means you've got to manoeuvre around enemies to hit them.
But then
they're just not built the mechanic to turn around.
That's a problem. The fact that there's no cooldown on the hammer, the fact that there's no real indication about how far the hammer swings. So actually, your only sensible strategy is to spam because you'd be better off having a 1 or 2 or 1.5 second cooldown, but having a very clear
arc that
it goes through, so you know what to do.
At least then there'd be a sense of timing to it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a quality problem, and then obviously
not a lot of effort's been put into like filling the game with anything, like.
And there's no goal.
There's not even like a score or a level counter.
No, it's very minimal.
I mean, like we sometimes see, like we saw a couple of games ago that had like fairly basic assets, but they've gone to the effort of picking some fairly basic assets and placing them sensibly, or even randomly generating them, just to make it feel a bit more full. Like so, just everything's empty here.
In terms of the procedural generation, then, and how effective that is, what do we think?
I think it's, as Ricky said, ineffective.
Oh, look at this!
Like directly takes away from the enjoyment of the game.
I mean, I think we should take them on their word, and that this is a bug, and that was what they're trying to get working. But we can only
what were they trying to get working?
So this much more kind of dynamic kind of.
But even so,
but clearly that's not working. You've got this huge,
And even so, if it's just a case of like where the exit to the room is, that doesn't add anything. Like if it was a case of the number of enemies or even the type of enemy, like if.
So let's talk about that then. So one of the things is is this innovation meaningful to the gameplay?
513 rooms.
And I think we said no. But what would you have had to do to make it more meaningful, do you think? So you've got the game where you kind of are manoeuvring around a maze. Jesus.
I mean, that sort of seems to be the main mechanic of their game. They're sort of, you're locked in one direction, it is manoeuvring. They've got these narrow walkways, sort of they can push you off and things. Maybe if they carried it more in that direction and created interesting battlegrounds.
So more like a sort of staying on the track, staying on the track kind of.
Or even just like you're on the bridge, defend the bridge from different incoming enemies and things like that.
But actually, I mean, it's fairly simple because you're just going up and down. But it is actually quite easy to fall off those. If you had some narrow bends in those bridges, you would effectively be negotiating across a twisty turny bridge that would take some skill. That might be.
If you stand on that bridge, will they push you off, Ricky?
Will you sort of go over them?
No, they just. So there is, I think, another bug, which is they only damage you from one side. So I think they only damage you from the front, I think.
They are just doubling the number of rooms each time, aren't they, as well? It went 513, 1025. It's powers of 2.
Powers of 2 plus 1.
Plus 1.
I think,
Callum's magical world is better than Ricky's magical world.
What's interesting though is that just doubling these rooms every time isn't actually doubling the number of rooms because they're doubling up. It's sort of 512 rooms.
And again, there's nothing to manage that.
Why do we never go left or right?
It's odd, isn't it?
Like, or even back. That would be quite an interesting challenge.
It just feels like the probability distribution is horribly skewed somehow.
It must be a bug. It must be a bug that's not picking left.
They've missed a -1 somewhere or something.
Yeah. So I don't think this game really does take advantage of what it's doing. So it's barely a playable game.
Oh.
And in a sense, I feel a bit sorry that the generation hasn't worked actually, because if it had, I think we'd be looking at some much more interesting levels at least.
Yeah. I'm not sure what would have made interesting levels for this dynamic though. It's effectively a destruction dynamic.
I think the only thing I can think of is that kind of balance thing, where you've got to negotiate.
Yeah, almost like sumo wrestling your way across.
So it's almost like like tightrope walking effectively across twisty turny passages
whilst being attacked.
Whilst being attacked or attacking, that would have worked. So rather than room passage, just have all passages as a maze that you can very easily fall off of.
So making it a maze as well, making it hard to see where I need to go and figuring that out as part of the paths.
To an extent, it kind of reminds me of those sort of flash horde shooters as well, where sort of a big horde of something comes at you and you have to sort of dodge around them and drag them along, and maybe if they've gone something in that direction as well.
That's the thing, right? Even if, like I was saying before, if they're just random, like not just generated rooms, but generated a number of people inside the rooms, and even had different paths. Like
or the other thing would be to, very simple thing. You start off without a hammer. Your hammer is in the maze.
Go find it.
So you've got to go find the hammer. So you've got to get to the hammer by avoiding the enemies, and then you've got the hammer, and now you've got to take the enemies out. Even that would kind of add a huge amount, and would be almost no additional effort.
And you can make some interesting choices in the level generation then to mean there are routes that are easy to get down without the hammer, and then you've got to find the routes back to destroy all the enemies.
You could even go a level above that and sort of have those platforms, and maybe if you take 5 enemies across a platform, a couple might fall off. That's it.
Yeah.
Just going a bit deeper in the game design just opens up a lot more options for being able to generate interesting content.
I feel almost like they, and a few of other people I think have done this, is they've just seen the generation bit and they've just latched onto random generation without really thinking about, okay, what are we generating it for, and what does that mean in terms of putting some rules in the generation to create something interesting. So, alright, we should move on. Right, so our next game is called Last the Night.
I saw this one in the expo, and this one opens actually with a little sort of mini cutscene. So
okay, so we've got a little gamepad intro.
Ooh. I wonder if the menu works.
I'm never a fan of these things because I can just never
controllers.
It's like as soon as it's off the screen, I've completely forgotten everything.
Easy. I'm going easy. Oh, cutscene. Exciting.
I like that.
So that is basically the entire narrative of the game. If you turn around right now,
how do I look up and down?
That's fine.
Was it right stick?
Nice little premise.
Does right stick not work?
No.
Interesting.
Might go
mouse and keyboard it is.
Unless you want a mouse and I'll controls.
We can give it a shot.
So
it looks like I'm surrounded by water. Am I able to
Last the night?
So there is technically water, but it's just a differently coloured surface. You can't fall through it. This looks a lot darker than how it did in the expo. I think this may be a bug, or it might just be Unity not playing nicely with us, because these were all very brightly coloured trees and stuff, and the view distance was quite high when I saw it.
Okay.
So this is quite spooky. I'll be honest. This is a very different atmosphere to it when I saw it first.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm getting very Slenderman vibes from this.
So
is anything meant to be happening?
So essentially, you've crashed on an alien planet. I think you have to survive until daybreak, and there are aliens that will attack you. I don't know. There's no real indication of that.
When do the aliens attack us?
So why have you gone anywhere?
So the microphone has a bright red LED on it, and I keep thinking there's something in the screen with sort of an eye. It's quite creepy.
So why have you gone anywhere?
Why have I gone anywhere?
Yeah, why have you gone anywhere? Why did you not just stand still?
Because it was more light over here. For some reason, my direction
I guess what I'm
of light.
getting at is, what is the point of going anywhere or doing anything?
So you can turn your torch on and off, right?
I think it's already on, isn't it? Isn't that why I've got a light?
But that's my point. Why would you turn it off?
Yeah. Well, so you can't see anything.
Oh, that's new. Oh, something is
a thing.
From where? Anyone see it?
No.
So I mentioned this to them in the expo as well. It'd be nice if there was some sort of directional indicator when you're taking damage, because when it was being shown off to me, they took a whole bunch of damage without knowing where it was coming from either.
They did.
Yeah, and given that our textures aren't loading in properly, it's going to be even harder for us to tell the difference between alien and scenery.
Tree.
Is that's about shoot that one.
I'm trying.
Okay.
But see, okay, so it's definitely not buggy. The aliens are definitely there, but it's taken us however long to actually find one.
Yeah.
And
so
that's quite nice.
What is that?
I don't know, but I've taken a lot of damage, and I
okay.
seem to be dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was on easy.
Yep. So they did say the difficulty even on easy is a little bit unforgiving, and that is intentional, so that you can see the procedural generation happening a couple of times.
Okay.
So if I go stand on this mountain...
Are they suggesting that we're the kind of cowards who would opt for easy?
Yes.
On every single game we played in this video, for example.
So the procedural generation they've got behind this is, I think,
what's the thing?
That's the ship you landed in.
Ah, okay.
So if I just stay up here, I should be able to see anything coming.
Well, except for the fact that it's dark, yeah. So they generate like the terrain itself, and they generate the scenery in it. So they've got a whole list of different assets, and they pick a group of like a subset of all of the assets they've got, and just spawn them sort of around you. But the thing is, I really don't know what that adds to this game.
Well, so I'll be honest with you, I like the premise, right? So I like the premise. Last the night, your spaceship crashes. You've got no idea what the environment is because it's randomly generated, and you have to survive.
But why would you go?
That's a great premise, but you have to do something with that premise. You have to put things in the landscape that will help you survive. You have to give people a reason for moving around. You have to put items of interest in there and then generate the landscape with some purpose.
Yeah, have some shelter or have some some weaponry or some
resources.
Like that.
So I got into this with them at the expo, and they said, "Oh well, we've generated this different scenery so the player can explore, and it'll be interesting every time." But but that's the point. They've got no reason to explore. It's a survival game. They're not going around looking at the scenery and finding it interesting. They should be running from their life.
So if you had something like the escape pods have been jettisoned on the way down, right, and you've got 10 crewmen in the environment, and you've got to survive the night, and the only way they're going to survive is you've got to go and find them, basically. Then it gives you a reason to find them. It gives you a reason to explore and go out.
But even that, I don't know if it'd add more than like a.
Well, it gives you some motivation. They give you some motivation to do something other than just stand at the top of the hill, gazing into the darkness.
Yeah.
Like if that was fun and it was quite rapid, like you could play a level and like because you've got the daybreak thing, maybe a level takes 3 or 4 minutes, and you've got to try and find people. There's almost like a sense of urgency there.
Yeah.
And then playing it again and again will be interesting. I think as long as there are like good cues as to like how to search the area and make that challenging but achievable.
I'm getting definite sort of horror vibes from this game. You could have done something with sort of an ammo mechanic or something as well.
Yeah.
With increasing the tension on the player, making them have to go and explore to really survive the night.
So I think we've definitely seen like one monster in this so far, so it's definitely spawning in the monster, but we've not seen any just standing here. And
there's 2. I killed 2 over here.
Oh, okay.
But I've not seen any since.
I wonder if they're activated when you go near them.
In which case, even more reason why not to just stay here.
And having a game where the dominant strategy is to find somewhere and stand there quietly is not the best idea.
So, do you want to just run around so we can...
Okay, sure. Let's go look around.
So it is nice that they sort of spawn like different...
Sweet, another barrel.
Like different...
You shoot the other bits of terrain?
Oh, what the... Did they just spawn in on me?
Yeah. Looks like it.
Holy... Oh, for flip's sake, what is... Is that a ghost?
Is that statue thing?
Oh, that was something.
It's a weeping angel.
Well, it's gone now anyway.
See, so this is one of the other things, right? They're spawning in all of this sort of scenery and stuff, and I don't know, on the one hand, maybe it gives you sort of like an idea of where you've been if you can remember it, but it's such a sort of like chaotic jumble of stuff. It just makes it really difficult to figure out what's and what's scenery.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we think about the overall quality? So obviously we've got some texture problems here.
So I mean, it's artistically nice, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think so.
So when I saw it in the expo with like all of the textures and stuff, it actually looked really nice, and it's definitely a playable game. But the problem is, like you say, the gameplay's sort of hampered by the fact that there's no real clear goal. There's no real like clear what we should be doing other than just standing by our ship and awaiting rescue.
Ooh, dawn.
It never tells us, does it? It never says what we're supposed to be doing.
That's quite nice. I quite like. I mean, that's what I said. I think the premise and the idea of using the night sky to kind of show you a little bit of where you are. That's really nice.
Oh, look! You can see the bat coming in the distance.
Yeah. Is it moving?
It's not moving though, is it?
Go on, you can get it. Aim high.
You see all the bullets just pinging off everywhere.
Yeah, the bullets sort of.
Hey!
You've got a sniper pistol. That was miles.
What is that? Is that a bird?
Is it plain?
It is getting lighter, isn't it?
Oh, that's definitely getting lighter.
Yeah, but I'm really like quite low on health at this point. I'm definitely going to make it to the morning.
You can do it, Yanni. Just stop moving. Stop moving towards the enemies.
Oh, there's a lot of bats.
Get them.
With the magical sniper pistol.
So I like the. Okay. It's almost like a BB gun or like a paintball gun. The way that those bullets are quite round, but they're quite visible, and they sort of bounce off things and ping around. I think you could.
I want you to survive here. I want to see the triumphant sunrise.
It'll probably just go dark again. Just loop all the way round. But there's a sort of playfulness with that I think could have been emphasised.
They're definitely getting closer.
Are they?
They're
not moving.
I think really slowly.
Just slowly.
So should they be moving that slowly?
No. Okay, what about, procedural generation? How well do we think that procedural generation is working?
So as far as what they've actually done with it, I think it works nicely. I mean, the terrain...
Terrain's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, it's navigable.
I like the mountains, and I like the fact that the mountains do convey sort of a...
dude!
So
it was tiny!
So that was the other thing I was going to say, is like the terrain itself is nice, it's navigable. I think the absolute sort of clustering of all of the scenery feels a bit too messy. It's not like, here are some recognisable landmarks, I know where I've come, I know how to get back there. Because it's just so jumbled and I mean, partly it's because everything is the same texture, but even without it, it's just such a confusing mess of colours.
Yeah.
That
well, it's dark as well, so you really need a lot more than that to help people landmark.
It comes down to that thing again, which is that the game and the procedural generation have to go together. You have to have something which is targeted at doing something interesting for the game, and they seem to have fallen into that trap of let's just procedurally generate a landscape with a standard sort of game in it, without thinking any more about that relationship. Okay, so in that vein then, I guess, is the innovation meaningful in terms of the gameplay or the experience? So
I think it could be for this type of game.
I think it could be, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. It's not enough there in this case, but it could be.
I think the premise absolutely, but it has to have some sort of exploration element to it, or some sort of reason for
if it was like a No Man's Sky kind of thing, and you were just sort of walking around this planet because you were interested in exploring it rather than sort of being hunted by these weird alien things, then it'd be cool because you'd have a reason to go and explore and look at things and sort of categorize them or whatever. But as it is, it's a survival game. You're holed up in one place and sort of like just blasting at enemies.
Yeah. So your best bet really is just to patch the wall somewhere. And
also, I'm still annoyed that I can't tell the difference between scenery and aliens. No. Why is that giant statue thing
there's something coming in.
Yeah. But is the game infinite? Because it seems like I'm just keeping running in one direction, and
it does seem to be growing.
Pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I mean that's quite nice. If so, it means I can just keep running off in one.
Yeah, like I said, the actual quality of the procedural generation is kind of nice, but its impact on the game is... I don't know, is that the edge?
Go.
Oh, it's just a hill.
Just a long way down. Yeah.
Oh, it's bright over here. Oh, maybe you have to run towards daylight.
I don't know.
Run to the sun.
It really does seem to be getting brighter, though.
All the colours have gone really strange over here.
Literally the end of the world.
Foggy? Is this like an intentional weather?
Is this a new biome? Where have we gone? And then I died to a mountain?
So, okay. And does the game take advantage of the fact it's procedurally generated?
It doesn't really seem to, no.
So again, as it stands, the game would be better with a nice designed level, wouldn't it? I think when you start seeing this progression out. But it has the potential to be a really nice procedural generation
being
game.
Killed by a flying statue.
I'm not sure the game is quite tuned enough to work really well with either procedural generated or
as it stands. No,
it needs to be a bit more thought out. And in terms of what are we supposed to be doing? Should we just be standing still and firing outwards, or should we be exploring?
Yeah.
And if you had to explore, then both you could design some levels that were interesting to explore, potentially because you're telling a story through that, or trying to lead the player through a certain set of experiences, or you could make it really interesting to explore through the generation. And I think they're close to doing the interesting to explore, but because it doesn't have that reason to explore, it's not quite.
It feels like they're quite close to having something really good. Some combination of this horror mechanic or exploration mechanic and what they've got. It's just not quite there yet.
Okay, I think we should probably move on. Right, so our last game for this video is called Unity Invaders.
Who played this?
I saw this one in the expo.
Okay, so it's a vertical shooter.
Yeah, it's a sort of bullet hell kind of shootery thing. So the underlying innovation behind this is procedural generation of content as well, but this time instead of generating the...
Am I meant to be able to go over here?
What was I saying? Oh yeah, instead of generating the environment, they use a genetic algorithm to alter the behaviour of the enemies, or, well, not the behaviour, but the stats of the enemies.
Okay.
So the enemies, I think, start with randomly... a random health and a bullet damage, I think.
Yeah.
Which then the algorithm sort of selects like the best enemy that level and sort of uses that stats.
I have no idea which of these would be valuable.
Red damage, green damage, blue damage.
So if you look at the bottom of the screen, it tells you which was the best enemy of the last level. So it was a red enemy. It had that health, that damage, and that fire rate. So it sort of gives you a hint about what the strongest enemy might be in the next level.
Okay.
So
I don't see any strength of enemies. Like, I just fire randomly up here.
Yeah, this is true. So the darker bullets do more damage.
So, okay. So those blue ones are worse than the green ones, and
well, I think even
within each colour.
Okay.
Yeah, even within each like alien species, if you like, some ships do more damage than others.
So what are they actually? So they're changing the strength and of the enemies, right?
Yes, I think so.
But not necessarily behaviour.
Yeah, not the behaviour, but the stats of them.
Okay, so for what?
How do you mean?
For what purpose?
So every level, the enemies are generated based with some variation around like the fittest alien. So the one that survived the longest, I think, or did the most damage to the player.
So does that mean you can? Is the strategy here to keep certain aliens alive?
So yeah, they mentioned in the expo it's technically a viable tactic to try and determine which is the weakest alien and leave that one alive until last.
I see.
I'm not sure that's the thing that you ever need to do, though. I think you can just do what Ricky's doing and just blast at all of them randomly.
So yeah, I'm not really sure how to choose which is like the strongest enemy, which is. So it feels like it would be a key part of this.
Yeah, I'm also not quite sure what the effect is going to be, other than that you can't learn the strengths of any of the enemies because they're always changing. Did they say anything about what they were trying to achieve?
Do you want to guess what they said?
Was it replayability?
It was replayability. But I think also to an extent, like it might sort of encourage the player to adapt their tactics. Like I say, if you could determine slightly more easily which one the weakest one was, and let that survive the longest, or even intentionally take a couple of hits from it, it could lead to like some interesting things where you have to make this decision about like intentionally leaving the somebody alive. But I think because it's like a sort of bullet hell shooter, there's so much just chaos going on, it's hard to make those sort of decisions.
Yeah,
I think that's why.
I mean, so I have to say, I'm watching Ricky play it, but it looks very playable. It looks like you really can play, you really are dodging the bullets, you really are shooting the things. It's taking skill to play.
No, it's not. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of skill and just mashing the mouse key.
Is that because you can shoot down bullets?
Can I?
Yeah.
Had not even noticed that. I assumed I was just.
So I don't even know what these. So red is that your damage against them?
Yeah, so you'll do more damage to one over the other. It's also interesting that you can like re-spend your skill points every level. So it sort of again takes away some of that strategy, right? Because you're not. If you were forced to always not be able to re-spend them, you could always say target the red enemies last, so that there are more red enemies next time, so that your upgrades are more valuable.
Yeah.
I think somewhere this genetic algorithm approach could really have shone was if there was sort of some uniqueness to each of the enemies, such as if maybe, I don't know, some bullets froze you or something, and that could be recombined with other enemies.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, these games are all prototypes. There's always going to be really interesting ways to extend them. But yeah, I think you're right. There's
sort of as it just feels like it's getting harder.
Yeah,
and
that's
there's no real. Doesn't seem like there's a real advantage conveyed by using a genetic algorithm to make them harder versus just making them harder.
Just upping the stats a little bit.
Yeah.
The thing is, those stats are all just too opaque as well, right? Their strength and their like shields and health are just. There's not enough information design there to tell me about those things.
Wait, is that? Yeah, you can't just reallocate them freely, right?
Yes, so. But they don't seem like they sometimes save, but sometimes don't save.
Well, it appears to be the point, right? So they give you some information, then you can reconfigure yourself. So
unfortunately, not quite getting enough information to make a meaningful choice.
And that's the thing. I think being like I say, letting you reconfigure it sort of takes away some of the interesting things they could have done with the genetics part of the algorithm.
Yeah. I think also maybe it's just a little bit too subtle, just being different types of colour and damage and health. Almost like you get different types of behaviour, things that are a bit more obvious to the player.
Yeah, that's what I mean about it being opaque, because it's just some numbers hidden behind no information design about them, other than the bullets. Like the bullets are a good way of showing.
When you normally play these shooters, and they do pick up different behaviour, but you've got the enemies that come down in waves, the enemies that go down the screen, the enemies that go down and come back up again.
Yeah.
The left to righters, the fixed turrets. You've got they all immediately have a character by their behaviour.
Yeah. And you could have those characteristics combined.
And you could have those characteristics be, in some way.
They're not doing anything like that, are they? They're just waving left to right and going up and down.
And I think that's part of the problem. They're just all a bit anonymous. So, okay, let's talk about the quality. So, I mean, I think it looks pretty nice and it looks playable and doesn't appear to have any bugs in it.
I mean, it looks like quite a fun game, honestly.
You say that.
I think I might have just died. I'm not really sure.
Alright, okay. It has no bugs for it apart from that one bug.
Otherwise, it looks like a reasonable game. It's definitely playable. There's definitely it looks like there's meaningful play.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, let's just not kill any of the red ones.
Is there meaningful play, or is there not meaningful play, or is it easy? I'm sort of on the fence between. Like, I just seem to mash there's no choice of when to fire, and there's no selection of weapons or anything like that. Right. So I'm not making a lot of choices other than to move out of the way of their bullets, which involves skill but isn't really a choice. I know I should definitely do that.
Yeah.
And I am just because they're not that evasive. I am just hammering the mouse at the bulk of enemies, and then waiting until there's fewer of them and moving to.
I mean, that background is really weird as well, isn't it?
What
actually is it?
I think
you're looking down at the earth as you fly.
Right, so it's supposed to be clouds and land.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you're above the clouds and there's
why does it not go...
See, I deliberately left all of the red ones alive to try and bump their stats. And it says the best enemy type was actually the blue ones.
And it got a score of 94 point something. It's also weird that its shield is at minus 0.6.
So, what do we think about the innovation part? It's adaptive difficulty, I presume?
No, like I said, it was the procedural generation.
It's one of those confusing areas where the two sort of overlap. Like, adaptive difficulty normally involves the alteration of some part of your game's content, but normally just the mechanical bit of the balance of your difficulty.
You could easily argue it was both, but they said it was procedural generation because they're procedurally generating the enemies that they use.
See, I don't think it is a.
For it to be adaptive, I think it has to model the player, and I don't think it's really modelling the player. It's modelling itself as much as anything.
Modelling what the player kills and doesn't kill, but
I'm not sure it's modelling that. It's recording it and is responding to that state. But I don't think it's saying, "Oh, this is a red hater. Let's do something with that information."
Okay. Well, whatever it is, how well do you think they're doing it?
It's sort of tough to say.
Yeah.
We're like you both argued before. It's sort of opaque enough that it's difficult to tell how well it's actually doing it.
It's too subtle.
Yeah.
It's too subtle, isn't it?
It is.
Like, it's a nice idea, and it's possible that behind the scenes it's all working sort of as intended, but we're not really getting a sense of it.
Yeah.
But that's like the next question, isn't it? So effectiveness, it's probably like you do see some changes in the size of the bullets and things like that. So I think we are seeing some modification of the different coloured characters over time. But whether that's useful in the game.
But is it meaningful? Okay, so is it meaningful in terms of the gameplay? So
I don't really think so.
It doesn't feel like it's making much of a difference to how this is being played or how I'm playing it.
No.
Yeah, like I said, I think it could be, but as it stands, I think they're too subtle that the player feels they need to sort of take control of that algorithm somehow.
And it's sort of the same, the other half of the same question really, but is the game taking advantage of the innovation? So is the game designed to take advantage of what's actually happening?
I get like there's not.
Again,
really...
I'm not convinced it is really. So,
like it feels like it's trying to. With that decision making there, it feels like it's giving the player an opportunity to choose to have an effect on.
This one does feel like less like it's been sort of just tacked onto a different game. It feels like you say, with that information it gives you and the sort of upgrade.
So perhaps way to think about it, and they have basically done this, but imagine you had a thing where you configure your ship to go up against the next wave, and every time you go up, the system learns about what you've configured and will then create stuff to defeat you.
Yeah.
That is basically what they've done, but it's too subtle. If it was more obvious, if you had to choose different types of weaponry, am I going to have a shield? Am I going to have the missiles? Am I going to have the stuff shooting out the sides of my ship as well as the top, right? And then the enemies were more varied. So like I said, you had different configurations of attack. You had fixed turrets. You had these kind of things. Then it kind of works. It's like, okay, you've now gone through a level. The system will have learnt, right, about the configuration you just had, and will now reconfigure itself to take against you. So one of your choices, your meaningful choices, is now to change your configuration to kind of double bluff the system, right? And that is what they've aimed for. So I think that in principle, they've actually, by having that bit where you configure your ship, they really have responded to it, but it just doesn't quite work. And I wouldn't mind betting that it's incredibly difficult to get that balance right, but it just feels like you need bigger levers to even get anywhere close. Right?
Yeah, I think that's the subtlety is what's broken this a little bit. It needed to be the differences between all the characters needed to be really, really stark.
It's one of the complaints that I think is much more common of adaptive difficulty, that they've just sort of scaled some stats and scaled some difficulty rather than trying to use it to make the game sort of more interesting and engaging.
Yeah. Okay, we should probably wrap up there.
We should.
Okay. So that's our final game. So thanks very much for watching, and we will be back with another 5 games in a moment.